Digital Omnibus is an initiative by the EU Commission to simplify GDPR. So GDPR was born in 2018, and 7 years later, the EU Commission is revisiting this topic, basically, with the goal of simplification. So simplification for EU businesses to foster growth and accelerate innovation across Europe. That's the main goal behind the Digital Omnibus. It's a very ambitious goal and a very broad one. So as usual, the devil is in the details. So Digital Omnibus brings a lot of initiatives that will affect our clients, the market in general, and the way consent is collected in Europe. That's why we have decided to join force with colleagues from other CMPs, forming an EU CMP association to present our common position on this Digital Omnibus project and see how we can make it better and make it achieve the goals that it's meant for. It's a tough question because a new regulation starts by adding more complexity to an existing set of texts and laws that exist across Europe. So my immediate answer is adding a new text a real solution to the problem? What I think is that Digital Omnibus and the EU Commission is trying to fight an important problem, which is to fight consent fatigue. The idea that today we are solicited way too much in our internet journey, in our journey across devices to collect choices that are, I think, too much, basically, for any internet user. So fighting consent fatigue is a good target. The current way of attacking this problem is probably not ideal. Fortunately, it's still a draft, still a lot of debates and opportunity to bring up ideas on how to get to that goal. So that's essentially what we are doing with this EU CMP association. So first, if you read through what the EU Commission stated as objectives, they estimate that Digital Omnibus could help remove as much as 50% of the cookie banners in Europe. So that's kind of the way they frame this problem. I mean, who wouldn't want to have 50 banners less on their internet journey? I would sign up for that. It's just that I think it's a very superficial way to look at what is a consent banner, what are the things that these banners are here for, and what do they trigger, what sort of consent infrastructure are they bringing to the table. At Didomi, we have been always very clear on the topic, so it's not about cookie consent, it's about building the consent infrastructure for the internet, for our clients that work and actually solve their many use cases around personal data. So I think so far that's not the way Digital Omnibus has been written and framed. So that's where it needs a bit of improvement. But fundamentally, and I repeat here, the goal is the right one. So try to interrupt less users, interrupt them for a good reason, giving them true control over how their personal data is collected and used. So that's what we all want. Companies that are effectively the ones collecting data have a lot to say about that. So on the why they are collecting this data, why it's justified, and how can they build trust with their end users by explaining this why. So that's what we are working on, and our suggestions and the way we interact with the Digital Omnibus project is really to push the boundaries on what it should be and how it should be phrased in a way that fosters progress towards the goal, fighting consent fatigue, yet also foster innovation, so making sure that we are not missing a train with respect to AI, to the way AI is going to transform the internet as a whole, and also to make sure that it's done in a way that favors competition, favors free market, and not only large established players that hold the reign of the internet as it currently exists. We, as a CMP, don't control consent fatigue. So we are constrained in many ways. We are constrained by the regulation. We are constrained by how the browsers, the operating systems function. So for instance, just an example, if you give a consent to a website on Safari, there is no way for Didomi as a CMP to store this consent for more than the duration of a cookie within Safari. Could be not much, so it could be 24 hours, could be a week. You get the example. So that's why we as a CMP, we are part of the problem, because we can't really fix it, but we're also part of the solutions. We know where this problem lies, so we know how to address these, and the way we think the digital omnibus should be framed is by really attacking the core of the problem. So how to make sure that any website can log and store a consent for a duration that satisfies the user. So a couple of months, 6 months, 12 months, that remains to be decided, at least not every day. So that's what I mean here. It's just one example. There are other aspects of consent fatigue that really depend on the whole ecosystem of how data is collected, how it's circulated across players on the internet. And really we see and we approach this problem as a consent infrastructure problem. It's not only about cookie banners and the user experience, it's more profound. And that's why consent fatigue is also a fascinating topic, because it tells you a lot about how the internet functions, about why data is collected. And so I'm passionate about that. I think that's really the next big frontier for consent management platforms, and we have a lot of ideas and a lot to bring to the table here. So the way Didomi is working on consent standard initiatives is multifold. We have a number of engagement with industry associations. So historically, we are known to have built the transparency and consent framework from IAB Europe that attacks standards for the ad tech world. We've also been heavily involved in making various consent modes happen. So the way Google collects consent, the way Amazon or Microsoft collect consents is now standardized, and so we are in charge of effectively collecting this signal and passing that to these actors. Now with Digital Omnibus, we see an opportunity to build a European standard, a very ambitious one that could really help GDPR be even more powerful for European businesses. This European standard is one that we are going to contribute through an industry CMP association called the EU European CMP Association. We are founding member alongside Acceptio, Usercentrics and Ayubenda. It's an association that aims at setting the foundation of this European standard on a strong foundation, so a solid basis that are driven by our experience, by how our clients think of this standard. And not completely influenced by the American way of looking at compliance. So essentially, we don't want a world where the consent standard ends up being another version of an opt-out system that just mimics what the Do Not Track was 20 years ago, what the global privacy control is right now in California, and that it's truly something European that is built on European privacy principles, so where privacy is seen as a human right and not as another asset that you have as an individual and as a consumer. Really something that will be a source of inspiration also for other regions in the world, and that really fosters privacy as something that is just not negotiable. Like you can't build the future of the internet on the premise of no privacy. We are really making sure that it also serves our clients' interests. So we're making sure that European businesses, global businesses thrive because we fixed correctly privacy on the internet through this standard, and not the other way around, where another standard that will just undermine their ability to engage, customize, personalize the experience of their users, and as a result thrive as businesses. Obviously, it's an ongoing topic, lots of discussions happening and lots of iterations, so stay tuned, more on that later.